I am not a Marine. I'm not an intelligence professional. I'm an American who decided I'm going to go to Baghdad and build a company. Every person shot me down. There's likely not a real business model that you should actually bank on. We don't look for business plans, 3-year financials. We know the goal's going to change. We know everything's going to change. So it's really looking at the quality of the human, how they think, how they lead, how they persevere. Number one for me is character. We want violence of action. We want people who just move. Good ideas are pretty rare. Our fund is designed to find those black sheep, those first-time founders that don't look like winners. If you're a good leader and you're in the fight, we will back you.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today's conversation is focused on early stage of defense and national security innovation, looking at founders, where there's barely a product, what signals matter, and where capital is and isn't real. Today we have Paige Craig, amazing background, founder and managing partner at Outlander VC, New York, early stage investing, kind of pre-seed phase, cross AI, innovation, robotics, national security. So a lot of the great things is a focus of this, podcast. And so he's got a great operated, grounded path into venture, previous Marine Corps. So we'll be able to touch base on that. So Paige, it's great to have you. Super excited about this. And thanks for joining.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. You started the Marine Corps, and then then you had a private company where you're supporting the military, got into venture. These background stories are super interesting to listeners and just how people end up where they're at, especially a lot of veterans listen to this. So I'd love you just to peel this back and, share how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, man. I'll give you the quick summary. So I grew up on the road. My parents were, I don't know what they're escaping, but they're escaping something. So we were homeless until 5th grade, which I know sounds rough, but being homeless in America isn't really hard. That's like, go to Africa and you'll see what hard looks like. But we grew up pretty rough. We squatted in abandoned houses, lived in cars. I did go to school, but we had an interesting upbringing. And I was really into the military young. My father pushed me to study. I think he realized that if I studied hard, played sports, something good would happen. And eventually, the West Point came and recruited me. And my dad also pushed me to get into college early. He got me into Sacramento State at 13. I was studying, and this is the early 1980s. I was studying Chinese and international diplomacy. And I thought I wanted to be a diplomat as a young teen to China. And my granddad, Paige Craig, who fought in World War II, rode across North Africa with Patton, was our interface with China. But that was my early dreams. And then West Point comes and says, hey, you can be an engineer everywhere. Because at that time I was thinking, I was coding, I was doing engineering work. I thought maybe I was going to go on and study at Northwestern or Caltech or something. But West Point comes along and is like, the best place to go in the world is join the military and learn how to lead and work with men. I guess now they would probably say people, but learn how to lead men. And I really liked it. I was a big student of history. I love playing sports. And I thought about it. I was like, they're right. Like engineering is like, you can learn it, but people are weird. People are different. And I really loved history. So I thought I'm going to go make some history. So went West Point. I was the most punished cadet in my class in 96. I left in my last year and I went and I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I enlisted in Marine Corps infantry. I got pulled into the intelligence world, graduated first in my class at Dam Neck. And I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. And then I went and joined the intel community, moved out to Northern Virginia. And along the way, I decided to start a private military. And my idea in '02 was, having worked at the tactical to strategic level from Asia to the Middle East, I really saw how weak our human intelligence collection ability was overseas. And so my big brilliant idea was to use modern technology, modern media, a bunch of front companies to establish collection capabilities overseas. And so I didn't know anyone with money, but I got a buddy to introduce me to a few people that had money, some VCs. And I spent like 60, 90 days trying to fundraise. Every person shot me down. Every single person shot me down. And so I just went into Iraq. I went to my boss and was like, "Hey, I'm going to go build this capability, and I'm going to do it." And so I literally flew to Jordan in '03, middle of '03. I snuck across the border with basically a fake CNN badges and fake CNN bags, and pretended to be a reporter covering the war. And I built this collection ability up from the ground up. And I was just a private citizen at that point, had given up my government job. I had zero protection. I had nothing. And I scaled that business to several $100 million in contracts. I sold it to Constellus. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to go invest in people that the rest of the world won't. And so nowadays I run Outlander Ventures. We write the first check into people. Yes, we fund tech, but I focus on 38 principles of what makes founders great leaders. And so we fund everything from defense, robotics, AI. We're working on a biosurveillance metagenomics program now. So it really just comes down to people. So that's my whole story.
Wow. So '01 happens, 9/11, and you're like, I got a great idea. Let me go into a war zone. So had you been deployed? I missed that. If you had you been deployed over there?
Yeah,
So you were very familiar with the landscape, the risks.
I was not familiar. I had worked in the Middle East, and I'd been on the board of Kuwait. I'd never been to Iraq before. I knew it from an overhead imagery perspective. I knew it from a intel perspective, but I didn't have. So I went at the very beginning of the war. I didn't have any experience in Iraq.
And so then you were just, I mean, tell me, you're laying the groundwork, you're meeting with people, locals, and then you're calling back.
My first days are like I fly into Jordan. I spend a few days drinking every day, trying to find the right Arab guy at a bar who is dumb enough to buy my story and smart enough to get me across the border safely. And I find that guy at the Toro Club, and I get this guy to take me across the border at like 03 in the morning, and I'm riding with him, my camera bags, my bullshit story, and we take a piss break in Mohammedia. I'm sitting there with like 800 other dudes looking at like, who's this fucking crazy American? I'm just like, I'm here to cover the war. And I get him to drop me off in the middle of Baghdad. And by the way, he's like, he keeps wanting to know where you going. I'm just like, just keep driving. I'll tell you where to go. Now, I honestly, I can imagine Baghdad from overhead imagery. I have no idea what to do. Like, I am not a government employee anymore. I don't have access to anything. I am not a Marine. I'm not an intelligence professional. I am a psycho ass American who decided I'm going to go to Baghdad and build a company. And I don't even really know what we're going to do yet because I realized I need to go there and see what the problems are. So I end up having them just navigate me across the bridge, take me over near the Sheraton where some of the security guys used to live, and I had him drop me off, and I walked a couple blocks to a little hubbly bubbly shop, and I just started jamming with local Iraqis. I convinced an Iraqi rug merchant to let me crash in his rug shop because I'm going to open a contracting business doing redevelopment in Iraq. And I just keep with the story the whole way. I just make a ton of friends. And from there, it eventually snowballs into I meet a dude who works for DARPA, and he needs some equipment sourced locally for a DARPA program. And so my first contract with the military is like a $5,000 go and grab some shit from the Iraqi economy and bring it back to me. And then it was a $30,000 contract with the Marines down in Yusufia running a PSYOP mission for them. And then that balloons later in the year to a $30 million program in Western Iraq running programs. So I just kind of made it up on the fly.
Holy cow. What'd your parents think?
My dad actually ended up working, he was the intel guy a long time ago, and he actually ended up working in Iraq. And we did New Year's in Iraq together. 2004 he comes out, and we were actually ran into each other and did New Year's together like a year later in Iraq.
What a story. So obviously a lot of great experience and a super successful business out of it. I mean, what a way to build a business, huh? What did that teach you about, kind of risk and speed and networking, that investors maybe, a different skill set you're bringing now into the investor community that probably doesn't exist very often?
a couple things it taught me, especially when it comes to like company formation and VCs, is when you meet founders in the earliest days, there's likely not a real business model that you should actually bank on. And a lot of startup life, especially the early days, is what we all call customer discovery. And if I think back to what I was doing in the early days, I realized I need to go and live with my customer. I had to go be in their environment and figure out what was actually going on, what their problems were to go build something. And you see a lot of companies today miss that very basic point of talking to their customer, living with their customer. So then you have to create value for someone, right? You have to recognize a problem or an opportunity. And so that really taught me that I love working with really gritty founders whose earliest days revolve around really fast and really deep cycles with customers. So it taught me that. I also taught me not to overthink being a VC. We're at First Check VC. We don't look for business plans, 3-year financials. We know the goal's going to change. We know everything's going to change. So it's really looking at the quality of the human, how they think, how they lead, how they persevere. And that led to our strategy. We invest in people after about a 2 to 4 week in-depth journey into your soul. We look at your life from like childhood to present day, and we try to imagine this founder journey. And I look for the calculus, like where did life go good, where did it go bad? And at the end of the day, we're trying to evaluate you across vision, intelligence, character, and execution. And there's 38 principles that I developed a decade ago about what makes founders successful after interviewing about 10,000 good and bad founders.
So you literally have a checklist you're running through and you're filling it out.
It's a checklist, kind of like, Moose Mus or any other like acronym, but this one has 38 and it's a way to go out there and like a Coca. It's like you're going to go do, look at the battlefield. This is a way for us to look at founders and go through all the things that matter to us. And not every founder has all of it. So it's a calculus of, are you strong enough within each discipline? You don't have to check off every single item, but you have to have real strength in certain areas.
Well, I imagine what you've just explained, I imagine exists. I've heard anecdotally does, like people coming up with good tech. They've got their tech. They think they know how it's going to be used. They spend all this time, all this capital on tech, and they run out of money. It's time to raise the next round. They don't have any customers. And it's like, well, great tech, but no one wants it. Or you can figure it out that motion. When you look at that, hit me with like the top 5 characteristics. It really, I imagine there's some number of like, these are non-negotiable, and this is what it looks like in someone. And with your military experience, how do military veterans fit into those spaces?
I'd say in many cases, military veterans can do great. And I don't have I'm here to fund veterans. I just have I'm here to fund great people. But I'd say one of the biggest is like veterans are great because like most great veterans just get shit done, which for some reason, a large part of the human population has a problem getting shit done, especially when there's chaos. But the biggest problem I see veterans have is if you don't come from an unconventional background or a background that teaches you to think on your own, right? If you're not used to that, there's a lot of veterans that are used to command and control, and they really need a higher authority. And I need to fund people who say, "Fuck higher authority. I am the highest authority, and I'm going to figure it out." And that's hard for many senior listed and many senior officers who are used to following sort of a not just super rigid, but like having a structure and someone saying, "Hey, here's the commander's intent, go execute." Like the reality is you got to be the commander. So I need people who are in their world, little Napoleons who want to make the world bend around them. But that's probably the biggest weakness with veterans is the ones that need someone to tell them what to do. So in general, the things I've found to be most deterministic. So number one is by far character. And within character, it's the ability to persevere, to survive hardship and lead others through it. That is like number one. I think you can be low in many other areas, but if you're that type of person that is so mission oriented, you are so aligned with the thing that you want to build, and you have the character and willingness to undergo anything, simply staying in the fight. And I also add in the and bringing others through, because you have to be a leader. This is not a solo game when you're a startup. You don't have to lead 100 people through that hole, but you got to lead a few. Is that's number one for me, is realizing that I'm dealing with a human who is so determined, such an animal, they are going to do anything to survive. And I don't mean unethical, but like they have no limits to what they're going to do to get this mission done. And they're going to take that extra time to let others know and encourage others and help other people get through that hard period, because it is not a solo sport. And then a few other things follow from that. You need people who are really good strategically. You need really good long-term thinkers who have the ability to get to good judgment, because you can mess up a lot of things in startup life, but if you get the strategy wrong, just like war, you can lose a lot of battles, right? But if your strategy is right, you're eventually gonna win. Startups are the same way. You got to get your strategy right, and it's okay to be wrong. In fact, you got to be okay being wrong, because you're not going to know all the answers. A lot of this is learning by doing, and this is the next thing we look for: is there evidence that you move quickly? Because slow movers, medium movers, doesn't matter. We want violence of action. We want people who just move. And you realize that recon by fire is kind of the best recon ever. And recon by fire, you kind of shoot in the bush, and if it doesn't shoot back, then it's okay. So you want someone who can go out there, move quickly, and that's what we look for in founders. Founders who build something, put it out there with the user, put it out in public, learn from it quickly. And so we look for these really fast execution loops. So as we're talking to people, we're learning like, okay, what did you do? You had this idea. What did you do? We look for this evidence that they built something, they put it in front of the customer, they listened to the customer, and they made a change. And we're looking for these really fast execution loops. So it's like high character, right strategy, really fast execution, and then also problem solving. Like when we look into the intelligence domain, we're not looking for geniuses. You don't need to be a genius to be, a $1 billion founder, but you just have to be smart enough. But one of the things we found is that problem solvers are critical. And you have to have people who have strong conviction about the direction to go, but they're willing to go into that uncertainty and solve problems all the time. A lot of being, a founder is like you're going to go into an environment where sure you don't know go to market, you don't know regulatory, there's so much you don't know, and you just got to be one of these people that's like, I'm okay with that. I will figure it out. And so you find great founders are problem solvers. So those are some of the traits that have tended to be most deterministic. But number one for me is character.
Are there any of these characteristics that you did not initially line up? I mean, I know this has been a growing thesis over time, but that you had an assumption of what was important that you later back when's like, actually, that's not that important.
There's a few. I've picked up a lot of tidbits over time, a lot of pearls of wisdom from people. One in the early days was how people pay themselves. And it's sort of like looking at when you go through the use of proceeds and the budget, you're really looking for someone who just intuitively understands they shouldn't pay themselves much. And it's not about torturing their souls and making their lives miserable, but it's more this long-term appreciation that every dollar you got should go into the company, should go into hiring someone else to make the mission better. So that's, I learned that from a few folks when I first got into business. And I was like, it's a pretty good rule of thumb. But I've also realized every single founder is in different circumstances. So you'll meet a guy that's got 3 kids at home or a disabled wife or parents there. And so you have to really not just look at the number, but once again, you have to go back to the human and ask yourself, why does this guy need 200K and this guy's okay with 50K? So it's like, it's kind of a rule of thumb, but I've really questioned how relevant it is. What I've realized it's actually more important to understand how the human came to that decision to pay themselves. So it's always a good conversation I like to have. One that comes up all the time that I violently disagree with, but a ton of VCs think is important is pedigree. There's a lot of VCs that want to see the Stanford, SpaceX, Stanford, Andrew, and you probably know this, but that gets so much weight in most tier one funds. And I've had so many founders get booted out of the process because they just don't look like the typical Silicon Valley winner. And yet we've been able to generate multi-billion dollar wins with people that look non-standard. So I say a lot of times our fund is designed to find those black sheep, those first time founders that don't look like winners. And I see why people have perspective, right? If you go and you spent 6 years at SpaceX and you went through Stanford and you work for Anduril, you will learn a lot of great things about what winning looks like, and that's certainly helpful. But I've also seen firsthand that unconventionally great people come from places other than those pretty common signals.
Thank goodness. So that may have covered it, but I'm just kind of curious. When you look at other folks in your same space doing the same thing, kind of early stage, innovative tech companies, are there any other items where you see that they're really putting weight on that you're just like, you know, doesn't matter?
Every fund has its own thesis. I disagree with, and I'm focused on this super early stage, like formation, kind of pre-seed seed stage. There's a lot of folks that want to look at a business plan, financials, all these like artifacts. I think most of that's just a load of crap. Like it all changes. It's certainly important if you're saying, "Hey, I want to understand how you think." But if you put any weight into like financial forecasts or product roadmap, like this is what's going to happen. I mean, that's probably not going to be what happens once they cross, the line of departure and go into the real world. Like all that stuff's going to change. So I think that's when I don't subscribe to that. And in fact, I we don't use pitches and briefings when we do ICs, when we do partner meetings. We do not let people present to us. It's only talking. There are no presentations. I don't want to see pretty pictures. Now, the one exception is we do a lot of, like, I'm a big believer in physical AI, robotics, and hardware and weapon systems. We like to see videos of stuff working. Like that can save us a lot of words. But other than videos of your shit working, we just want to talk to you. We don't want to see decks or presentations.
That's awesome. Give me, if you can, you've obviously been wildly successful. What's your favorite win story of someone that came from maybe an atypical background?
Man, there's a lot out there. I think I have a guy right now that really, I mean, I always hate this, I say I have many founders I love who are doing great things, but I'll pick this guy up just because he also like kind of close to him. So this guy Phil is building a company called NODA, November Oscar Delta Alpha, NODA. It's orchestration AI. And Phil's family came to this country from South Vietnam. He has a huge chip on his shoulder. His uncle created the South Vietnamese Air Force. His family lost the war. We lost the war with him. He came to America, got into West Point, gave up his West Point commissioning because he wanted to be a pilot. Like he came in very focused to be a pilot. And, his dad is, traditional like Vietnamese dad, like essentially disowns this guy for, walking away from West Point, but he did it because he wanted to be a pilot. He goes to a no-name university to get his credits done because the Marine Corps says, "Hey, we'll let you fly for us. We don't care where you go to school." So he goes, joins the Marine Corps, and later on realizes, I don't want to be in a jet. He goes and becomes a JTAC. And so he's on the ground, Afghanistan, serves 15 years, eventually gets out. He's still doing reserve duty, works for C3AI, builds a ton of their defense capability, and then comes to me a couple of years ago with this incredible vision saying, "Hey, all of these people are building autonomous weapon systems, autonomous robots, whether individually or swarm, but who's building like the system that makes it all work together?" And as crazy as that idea sounds, right? I mean, you got like, here's this Marine who's has no traditional background for being a founder. He goes out and builds that, and he's in revenue, wins over $10 million in contracts his first few months in. He's now closing hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts and he's barely 2 years old as a company. And we're in multiple theaters doing real world shit. And it's just like this guy, like if you understand the military perspective, you're like, this dude's a badass. And he's here to serve his nation. He's here to build real solutions for a warfighter. But man, that guy talked to so many VCs who could not understand him and what he was doing, where he came from. But we just really clicked.
Like, I can imagine why, and that's awesome. I also love to hear because it's an older founder, someone who I happen to be myself.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, like that, that's probably another one too. It's like a lot of people think like I was the first money in scale and they were 18 and 19 years old when I funded them. But this is also BS. It's like I have a couple 40-year-old founders, people in their 40, early and late 40s who are building multi-billion dollar companies. And it's like those years of wisdom actually help them move faster than my 20-year-olds. But I think the thing that is negative about older founders, right? And it's very easy to see is if you lose that fire, right? Sometimes life just beats the fire out of you. But if you have that fire and you're working on a mission you believe in, and you're able to harness that extra 15, 20 years of experience, I mean, that can be jet fuel right there. And if you find a founder who's in their late 30s, 40s, who brings real wisdom and network and experience, they can maneuver around things that 20-year-olds just don't get.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, life experiences do matter at some point. And it's very interesting because a lot of the early money that I see is just playing a math game, spray and pray, very. And so it sounds like you've been highly successful with your early investments. I mean, you've had, like you said, some great outcomes. What makes it special to have Outlander join, a company? Why would I want you?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, our financial results are we have massive DPI. We have always been top decile funds, and we produce not just TVPI, but DPI. What that means is like we produce real money. And I'd say it mostly comes down to three things. We invest so early. We invest at a stage that most VCs can't. So that ability to pick people is like our night vision, because most VCs need to invest with conviction, with big checks. Once they see revenue and retention and all this math crap work, I'm not a math crap guy. I'm a people guy. I like to have that night vision where I can bet on you and you have no revenue, no customers. Second, we're in the foxhole with you. So like I don't have this belief that VC's job is just to pick, roll the dice and hope for a good outcome. Like I like to be in the fight with founders. And so when you can't get financing, when you make bad hires, when you have problems, I will help my founders through any problem as long as they're honest about it, right? And want to go face it. And so I like to have a relationship with my founders where they can tell me the worst stuff happening, because the reality is like all these good companies I've funded, we've been through really nasty stuff together. And most of these great companies have to solve really hard, annoying, intractable problems. Some of them are very personal issues between founders. Some of them are really hard strategy problems. Some of them are very hard business model problems. But I love all of it. Like the thing that turns me on, besides the feeling of the hunt, like discovering that unique person, the other thing that makes me go for 10, 12 years working with people is there is no limit to the amount of fucked up stuff that's going to happen in your startup. And I live for fucked up problems. Like when stuff's going great, don't wake me up. If you got messy shit, like I always excelled at unfucking problems. Like I love that. So that's, I think that's what makes our strategy work is we invest incredibly early. And by doing that, we capture value and we become the most important VC to that founder. And we actually live up to that. Like we like to be in there helping them win. And we don't have to have co-leads. We don't care who else invests. Like we will do an entire round with no other investor. We'll just take more ownership. But we also like to share with other smart investors. But the point is, we will do the whole round, and I don't care who else is in there. And if it doesn't work, we'll come back and we'll reinvest again, as long as you are in the fight and showing us that you have some little potential to go out and win. Like we're here for you as long as you're not afraid and you're in the battle every day. I think the biggest reason you'd want us is that we are going to go into any problem you have and we're going to help you solve it. That doesn't mean I run your business, but we really live to be long-term partners, helping you solve the most difficult problems. Co-founder issues, financial issues, product issues. We are not passive investors, right? We talk to our founders 2, 3, 4 times a week if that's what it takes. We will go to your offices. We will work with you. And that doesn't mean we run your company. Like you are the CEO, you're the founder, but we like to help our founders win. Second, we have a ton of reserves and we have follow on money. We will reinvest even when it's extremely non obvious that you're winning. we will back you because of who you show us that you are. If you're a good leader and you're in the fight and you're not operating out of fear, we will, and we've done it many times, continue to reinvest in you and bring other people alongside us to reinvest in you when things are not going well.
There's so much to unpack there. So a natural tendency, I think, from founders with their investors is, which I kind of get. I mean, I know I exist, but I don't want to share too much because that might signal I'm not doing well as a founder. How do you get through that with your founders to be like, look, I can share that I don't know what the hell to do right now. I don't know how to do this.
I think it's really easy. And it's the same thing you see in the military. It's the same thing you see in like good leadership is they have to understand, and you have to actually feel this. They have to understand that you want them to win, right? They have to understand that you want them to personally win, that you want their dreams to come true. And that part of doing that requires a relationship of transparency. And part of what you have to do as a VC is not be a bitch. Like when you hear bad shit, don't whine. Don't be like, oh my God, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, don't be the naggy, annoying, just don't do all that bullshit that people do. Just listen to the problem, say, great, let's go fucking solve that together. And you have to have that relationship of trust where it's like, I want you to win. And you can trust me with the ugliest, darkest bullshit because we're a team. And I'm not going to get on your back and piss on you and my whine and like, let's just go solve problems together. Right. And you do that from small problems at the beginning, big problems, whatever it is, like we're going to go solve problems for you.
No, and I think that's incredible. I talk to a lot of companies. That is that's a risk that they see. VC of just getting judged, if you will, and then my money's not going to be valued. My company's not going to be valued as much because there's questions in me, and so to remove that, I mean, that is powerful in itself. I mean, holy cow, amazing. How do you help companies? Through. I mean, you're going to go solve problems, but where do you find yourself showing up most with your type of? Is it like partnerships, GTM, fallen capital? Like where do you see that founders really do need kind of the most help and you're able to provide value besides, you know, the items you mentioned are real and fantastic.
Look, at the end of the day, we can't solve every problem. When talk about solving most problems, there are situations like where I've flown overseas and I've dealt with a security situation for a company. There are individual things I've done that are not scalable. And sometimes you have to do that. But most of it is one, helping them fundraise. The one thing that VC should be really good at, much better than their founders in the earlier days, is we should have a better VC network and a better ability to advise them and help them raise capital. That's number one. Like table stakes is helping founders raise capital. Number two, which requires real experience and wisdom, is helping them think. Most of this problem solving is not me going to the office. It's not me hiring people or me firing people or me solving strategy problems. It's me and a founder or one of my other 7 founders. We focus on helping founders think. That is number two. Number one is fundraise. Number two is helping them think. And it's having the only way to do that is to have that relationship and that honest discussion and that frequency, right? Where you understand context. So the founder doesn't have to catch you up on the last 3 months of what's been going on. You've been in constant dialogue and you can say, hey, let's talk about this problem. And you unpack it and you ask them, how are you thinking about this? Have you thought about this? Would you think about it differently? If you make that decision, are you willing to risk the entire company for that decision? Is like, so you're helping them think about what they're doing. And I have found that helping founders think is the most scalable thing you can do for a company, whether that is about strategy, roadmap, people, fundraising problems. It is helping founders think and helping kind of mold that judgment and letting them get to the point where they're learning from all your experience. And sometimes it's making the intros to the other people on your team or other founders that you know and asking those people to share some perspective with the founder and helping them think as well.
Yeah, that's powerful. A little bit more on the market and the capital markets. It seems, I mean, it's obvious, private capital and defense tech, if you will, a lot of hardware. That narrative's really shifted in the last, I don't know, 5 years. But you've been in this for a while. Did that worry you before? Because you're like the returns on hardware in theory are longer.
I had a no hardware rule for many years, and it was, when I got in 2009, and besides picking people, I'm always thinking strategically, what is the right time to invest in technology? What are the right problems to be focused on? Hardware wasn't right when I got started. But the big shift for me was starting, a few years in, I really focused on AI. We did first money into scale and view and a lot of AI companies. And it became pretty evident a few years in that as AI was working, that software, like code itself wasn't going to be the big value creator. When everyone can create code, it's not going to really capture value. And so I realized the next thing we had to get into was really deep tech and hardware. So we've been spending a lot of time on physical AI for years. And that is the intersection of AI plus robotics. And even now, I remember when hardware was not popular and you're going around trying to get people to fund your hardware companies, that is shifting dramatically. And I think we're going to see it continuously get easier. And so I'm now looking at the next stage. And I think, I could be wrong here, but we're starting to dip our toes into AI plus life sciences. And we're looking at RNA and DNA and chemistry and biology. We're working on a deal now that's using metagenomics to monitor universities for diseases. So think of like biology radar on the periphery. It's something that could eventually protect schools and ports and city blocks. So now I'm starting to push into that AI plus life sciences as the next frontier. But the bulk of our investing for the next several years will be hardware and deep tech plus AI.
What is your view then with companies that have like, I focus more on the defense side or war side? What's your thoughts on like the cyber programs? You have a lot of, throw money, they get stuck in the valley of death. There's but it is non-dilutive capital, dual use versus single use. What's your take on all that?
And there's so many things to unpack right there. But one, I believe anything that creates more surface area for founders to work with warfighters and decision makers is key. I think we should do more of it. I think what we're actually missing is I think we should push decision making and contract authority even lower. And I think individual units, and we need to sit down and we need to push, maybe take a lot of this R&E budget, take a bunch of it away from labs and these federally funded research and like look at the bullshit places that don't transition things. I mean, there is fundamental research that's critical, so I won't naysay all of it, but there's certainly a big chunk that needs to go into what can we have in the next year, and I would put that money into 100 plus, maybe a couple hundred plus units across every service and let the war fighters, right? Let the smaller units make decisions, but put in place a program to monitor it all and have someone who's responsible for finding trends and winners and service those up to a higher echelon to say, hey, this seems to really be working at this squadron, or this seems to be really working at this brigade. Let's move it to this place and see if it works. Okay, it's working. Now let's get that operational. But we don't have that. There's a real disconnect between warfighters' immediate needs and the ability to cut a real check, not a bullshit check, not a CRADA, but these units should be able to write $500,000 or couple $1 million programs. And if you think about it, if you get a military unit, right? If you're a VC and you sit down and Joe Schmuckatelli, who's doing whatever AI, autonomous infantry weapons, has 3 contracts from a couple of infantry units, and here's 200, 400, 600K, and you can go talk to those guys, that gives private capital a real signal that a warfighter needs this stuff, right? And so I think we need to, that layer does not exist in America right now. On dual use and, single use, like i.e. kinetic, I'm down for both. I think as an investor, dual use is much more broadly appealing, and that's mostly what we do. At the end of the day, most of this autonomy, whatever we're building for the military, most of it will probably yield better impact for enterprises and consumers. The issue is that might take 10, 20 years to actually happen, just like it has done for previous tech. But I think you should be open to the fact there are things like we fund fully autonomous weapon systems, we fund munitions companies, which have no dual use. But I do think as an investor, most of it is obviously dual use or may become dual use in the future. But I am surprised at the number of defense companies that do not have the authority to do kinetic systems.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, pushing it down that low, it's where they need it. That's who sees it. You would talk to some acquisition program official. He's trying to fit use cases and things he doesn't even know about. He's not on the front lines. So
That it's just, I mean, it's insane. Like you could take some of these billions, push them down to, a couple hundred units. And, these units could be spending millions, tens of millions of dollars each year building tech that work, having tech built for them that works, but more importantly, sending signals up the chain as to what's actually working on the battlefield, or at least in an exercise or some fort.
well, Paige, we could keep. I mean, this is so awesome. I'd love to keep talking with you. We got to start wrapping up. I'm gonna do a quick lightning round. Give me your quick thoughts. I probably won't answer unless it's just fascinating. I got to dig in more, but I got 5 questions for you. So, what's the most common mistake you see defense tech founders make?
Not knowing how to go to market. Like they build cool tech and they have no idea how to actually go sell it to the government or who to go sell it to.
What do you wish more founders understood about raising capital in the defense world?
That investors actually want to talk to you.
You don't need to keep everything a secret. What makes you say yes to a defense tech in the first meeting? I'm not sure that happens, but in theory,
Well, that never happens because I have to get to know the founder. But I really am looking for a unique insight because most of the things people pitch me for defense are one of hundreds. Like just a lot of people aren't thinking about what's actually useful and insightful. Good ideas are pretty rare.
what's a sacred cow in defense tech you think will be proven false?
Nuclear weapons.
Can you expand a little bit on that?
Well, I mean, there's really no startups building there, but I think they should.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So I mean, like, that's kind of it's kind of locked up at like, I think we're going to see this might be unpopular, but in an age of autonomous swarms and autonomous warfare, we need to modernize our tactical nukes. And I think we need startups to do it. And we need to shift how we run our tactical nuclear program. But that's a sensitive subject.
Sure, absolutely. What's the biggest funding gap in defense tech right now?
Unmanned ground vehicles. At the end of the day, I love the Navy and the Air Force, but if you can't take a piece of land and kill the people on it and own it, you don't win the war.
Yeah, this is a great page, but we got to start to wrap it up. If folks want to, find out more about you, pitch you something, how's the best way to do that?
It's Paige with an I, Paige at Outlander.vc. And I look at every email and we actually read those emails and we respond to people.
That's actually rare.
We look at about 10,000 deals a year. I mean, a lot of them are like, "Hey, sorry, it's not fit for us," but it doesn't go in the black hole, and we get about 10,000 inbound. We talk to about 4,000 people every year.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Paige, this is great. I look forward to meeting you at some event or something and buying you a beer for your time. Your background's amazing. Your perspective's amazing. And you're doing great for our country. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you for your service.
You too, man. Thank you for your service, and definitely grab a beer with you. Hit me up in New York, and I'd love to see you next time you come through the city.